Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Honey, We Need to Chat.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah, I got nothing now. I was so focused on what I'd say.
Yeah. And I've chosen to absolutely ignore it now because that's what I've learned in parenting. Ignore the behaviors you don't like.
Just so you know, I try and I'm not going to say what I said, but I try and say something cheeky or shocking or something to throw Amy off when we first start recording.
It's just nerve-wracking because I'm the one that edits, and what if one time I leave it, we'll get cancelled.
Yeah.
We won't get cancelled.
Well, we won't get cancelled.
People will probably just listen more.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, welcome back to Honey, We Need to Chat. Please excuse my immature husband. Don't know why he's my co-host. I'll find another one, but for now he'll do. Bonnie will fill in. Bonnie will fill in. Yeah, we're back for a chit-chat today, and we're chit-chatting about a good chat.
Yeah,
good topic.
That's right.
I think
this is something that we have spent a lot of time in personally, like in our relationship. It's on the 5 love languages, but how 5 love languages are misunderstood is the topic for today.
It's funny because love languages is something most everybody has heard of. And if you haven't heard of it, it's a bit of a groundbreaking concept. So if you haven't heard of love languages, hop back and listen to our original episode about it, and even go on the website and do the little quick quiz for you. It can be incredibly helpful. But what's funny is that every time someone mentions love languages, especially online, there's such mixed responses. And I've always been a little bit confused why it's such a controversial topic. Yeah. But I think what we talk about today, which is the misunderstanding of it and the misuse, I guess, of this framework, is probably why there's a bit of blended opinion about it.
Yeah, and we're in this conversation today, we're going to bring a little bit of what we've learned by practicing this concept of 5 love languages.
Yeah.
So there's areas where, not that we disagree with the book and with the whole concept, but things that we've, I guess, identified while going through it, the book doesn't really capture. And that's what we want to share too.
Yeah, I would even challenge it. I'm not sure it's that the book doesn't capture it. I think it's almost the movement around it has taken it so far. Yeah, and it happens all the time and we'll dive into that as well. It just happens all the time with stuff like this. But yeah, it's stuff that it's almost like a grain of salt to add to how you take on board this information. Yep. Before we dive into the topic though, we're just going to touch on some impactful quotes that we've had this week, or comments. For one thing, last episode we had a clip that I put up on TikTok, and it was us talking about a story that we'd read out about the division of labor between the houses, and we're talking the clip is me saying, you know, if my job is to look after kids, then there also has to be off time, just like a person working outside of the house would have off time. Anyway, Maddie B commented on her TikTok, and it was something that I was like, that is so well put. So I thought we would share it on here just as like a little aside to that episode. And she commented and said that the smartest thing she ever heard was aiming for equal rest instead of equal work.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good because we also had somebody on Instagram asking, how do you navigate this conversation? How do you navigate this dynamic in relationship? And we kind of chatted back and forth there a little bit, but it is a tough one. And I think if you're trying to start dividing the labor within your house, it gets really complicated because what counts as labor, what's more or less weighty in that space. But when you look at it from this perspective, which is aiming for equal rest instead of equal division of labor or equal work, I think that's so helpful.
Absolutely. So just some context to that episode. So my mum was at home. She wrote into Reddit. She was at home looking after their baby all day while the dad went out and played golf all day. And he came home and he needed his rest because he was out all day and he was tired. The mum was saying, well, then when's my rest? Like, I'm still, you know, I've been with the baby all day. I'm still with the baby. Like, when's my rest? And so that's where this write-in on TikTok, that was actually amazing and a great tool. Yeah, just to think through is like, well, okay, cool. You're tired. That's cool. But when am I going to get my rest? And having that conversation, discussion is, really helpful.
Yeah. So thanks for commenting that, Maddie B. I don't know where you got that. You said you heard it from someone. So maybe it's a well-known phrase I've never heard before, but I think that's a really good lens to put on when you're navigating these conversations. So that's our little side note for the Reddit episode. If you haven't listened to that one, hop on over and have a look. Alrighty. So a couple little pieces of information as we go into this episode that we think is a good kind of perspective and lens to listen to the rest of the episode, the rest of the discussion with. And we just wanted to share them here and kind of give them a little bit of a space so that can be in your mind as you're listening to the rest of the stuff we're chatting about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one here is from Tony Robbins. Do the things you did at the beginning of the relationship and there won't be an end. And I think this is something that we've tried to encourage on this podcast is, man, we in the early days, we spend so much time of being intentional. We have this huge attitude of curiosity and this eagerness to grow and to learn about the other person, and we're excited about that. And I think this is a really great phrase or quote to have in that to help us with the lens of that, to be intentional, to still be intentional, to still set aside time, to still be excited and eager and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So thinking back to those early days when you guys first started getting together or interested with each other, having that as a lens really helps these conversations.
And obviously that doesn't mean like learning all the new things about your partner, because life has changed, seasons have changed, you've changed and developed as a couple. But yeah, having those intentionality. So there's a few things like listening deeply and showing genuine curiosity. We talk about that all the time on the podcast. Prioritizing quality time and creating meaningful moments. Like there was just so much more intentionality around that before we got married or when we were first together. Expressing appreciation regularly. That's another thing that as the years go on, and especially if you grow a family or you fall into the rhythms of life, it's really easy to forget those things. It's really easy. Not that you don't feel them, but just to actually express it, because a lot is unspoken. And communicating with kindness and excitement and being eager to connect. I think that's something as well. As life goes on and things get harder, it's harder to feel excited or communicate your excitement of being with each other. Or it's even hard to like recognize your excitement of being with each other and communicating with kindness. That can become really hard when you fall into everyday rhythms and fall into patterns of communication. So those kinds of things, even though there's a lot from the beginning of your relationship, you can't just transfer to now because of how much more deeply you know each other. Yeah. There is ways of going about relationship that we can.
And it doesn't have to look the exact same as when you first started getting together, right? Like, so, one thing that comes into my mind, we used to go out for date nights weekly, right? We did that a lot.
Every week.
And that was great. And now I'm like, I get tired at a certain point. I never had that back then, right? Like it was, it was nice. It was nice being out. When I was younger, we could stay up later and stuff like that, and I wouldn't get as tired. And I was thinking through this actually, like even with my mates now, right, we go out for dinner. We try and go out as soon as we can, and then we're ready to come home at 8:30.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I'm home. Like we're just tired, but it's so great though, because we're good. That's fine for us. We're all in the same boat. We're like, we're dads. We're going to get up early. We're going to get woken up through the night. Let's go home. We caught up. We had quality time. We encouraged each other, and then we went home, and that was good. So again, like it's not that you have to do the exact same things as you used to do. It's your approach to whatever it is, your circumstances now. That's really the challenge.
Yeah. And the second one that we were going to just highlight before we dive in.
Is by Stephen R. Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand. We listen to reply.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot, especially if we're in an argument. My response is like, I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to build up ammo so I can get back to you. Well, when I'm being prideful unintentionally prideful in an argument, I'm listening to build ammo. To fire back at you.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to take into any conversation. But as well as we said, diving into this conversation, just listening to learn. Listening to understand instead of listening for what we can come back with. And I actually just made a TikTok yesterday about that, because I feel like sometimes resources like our podcast can be used almost as ammo. So people will listen and be like, that's great for my partner.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do that all the time. Yeah. All the time. Yeah. So even if it's not listening to them, it's not that you're doing this listening to them. You could also be learning for them, because you're not learning to understand yourself.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's dive in. Let's chat about why love languages might be a little bit misunderstood then. So it's funny because tools like love languages, personality tools, a lot of these things, even phrases that people take on board, so often get used as they morph. They turn into something that can be a helpful tool, something that can be a helpful reminder or perspective, and they turn into a rule that people stick to and boxes that people put people into, and it's like rigid and not flexible, and it becomes helpful because of how they've made it. And this is not unique to the love languages. And it's not the problem of the person who created the love languages. It is the use of it that has become an issue. And that is, I think, a lot of the time what we see with things like this. So the 5 love languages is just a tool to equip you in your relationship to love each other the best. So like things like, the Enneagram. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but I've heard of it so many times. It becomes like I'm a 7, so I can't date a blah, blah. I don't understand the Enneagram, and I've tried, and I love personality tests. I have tried so hard. And I think it's because I don't fit. So half of you are probably screaming like, you don't understand it. And I don't. Please send it to me if you have any tips. But that's one of these things you can see people being like, no, a 7 wouldn't work with a 3 or whatever. Or the love language is like, oh, he's acts of service and I'm words of affirmation, and that just doesn't work. We're not compatible. Even things like phrases, as I said before, so like the one who cares the less has the power. A phrase like that can be helpful because it puts something onto a pattern that someone's recognized, and it can be a helpful tool until it becomes a rule. And then it's like, then it's just toxic. Then it's not constructive. It's something that people believe to be true. It's something that plays out. So, someone will be like, I can't date someone with this kind of personality. That's not true. I've heard people say that because we're opposites and we've done these things. We come up opposite on almost every test. And I've had conversations with people where they'll be like, it's really good. We're so similar on tests. So we really are compatible. And that's great for them. But then we've also had the flip part of it being like, are you compatible if you're complete opposites? Yeah, you can be. Yeah, these aren't strict rules that mean you can't work together.
No, and from our experiences, because we're complete opposites, we actually work really well together because you feel the gap of like, your strengths are my weaknesses and vice versa, right?
Well, my strengths are your weakness.
What?
I don't know. And we communicate good.
Yeah, words. All right, cool. Yeah. So I'm going to read through, just so we're all on the same page here, what the 5 love languages are based on the exercise here. So words of affirmation, which is verbal appreciation and encouragement. Acts of service, doing things to ease your partner's burden. Receiving gifts, thoughtful tokens of love. Quality time, undivided attention, and physical touch, which is affecting cuddling intimacy.
And this is a framework that was pulled together by Gary Chapman. And there's a lot of resources in this space about it. And basically his whole point is that we often express love in a certain way, and we expect to receive it in a certain way. And when there's a misunderstanding there or there's not clarity there, that's when relationships can find themselves in trouble. And if you've listened to many of our episodes, you would have heard us say in response to a lot of the Reddit stories that love language discussions could be a helpful tool in a lot of these situations. So it does come up a lot. It is something that people can miss pretty easily.
Again, in our last Reddit, we were talking, there was a lady that wrote in, and she was saying about how she's doing all these things for her partner and he's not doing it back. And straight away, Amy and I were like, I feel like, she could possibly be acts of service is her love language, because we give what we want to receive. It becomes it's a lot more natural for us, but his might not be. So that them learning that together could actually help her and help him to understand what she actually needs and what that looks like, but also helps her to understand, well, expectations are going to be different for different people. Yeah. So just a great tool.
Yeah. So helpful. It's helpful. And then can become unhelpful. So these are some of the biggest misconceptions about the love languages where it might start to go a little bit wrong. So number 1, if I know my partner's love language, I've cracked the code. So like my partner's love language is quality time. That means I just need to schedule a date every week and we're good. Yeah. So it's like taking the foot off of the accelerator and just coasting because you're like, oh no, I've got it, check mark.
Or ticking the box, right? So I've ticked that box. I've ticked that box. Like I've booked a date night. Why, why you got a problem? I've done it. I've done my job.
Yeah, a really good example of this is gifts, and Blair has a tendency towards gifts, but a gift, just any random gift, me buying you anything, doesn't necessarily communicate the same love.
No.
It's about the intentionality behind it. So a little checkbox of that it's not a checklist, basically. No. It's not something to just say.
Yeah. So for example, my favorite gift from Amy is a mug, right? And it's not any mug, it's a specific mug. So it's the cheapest gift she's probably got me, but it's the most sentiment to me. So there's a lot of meaning behind the gift itself. There's thought. It's not just I want things. It's actually you've gone out of your way to think about me, and so you've got something based on what you know about me me. And that's a special part of the gift. So you can't tick that box. There's intentionality behind that gift.
Which, as a person who's so not gifts most of the time, it's really overwhelming to think like that. But instead of it being overwhelming because I have to get it perfectly right, it's more about having these love languages as like a thing you're curious about and you're learning through and you're exploring together. And this can be part of what we spoke about before, that fresh intentionality you have at the beginning of the relationship. This can be something you keep being fresh in, you keep being intentional in.
Yeah.
So it's not Amy missed the mark, she got the wrong mug, or she got the wrong present. It's a learning thing. And
the other misuse of this too is expecting Amy's going to know that.
Yeah, which we will get to. You're diving right ahead.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So the second one is I only need to show love in their love language. Similar thing to the first one. It's not just about, oh, I got it right, and that's all we have to do. I only ever have to do the dishes for him and he will be happy. I only ever have to buy him a gift every weekend or whatever and he's going to be happy. Love languages are not, this is your only way of showing love and that's the only thing that matters. And there's something that he talks about in the books that you were referring to earlier when we were chatting about this episode called the love tank. It's not just about you found that love language and that's all you have to do. That's actually not helpful and actually not the complete picture, because even though someone probably has a main preference or a main two preferences out of that list that we've read out to you, all of them are important to everyone in different ways at different times. And so, no, you don't just get to be like, this is his love language, this is her love language, and now that's all I have to cater for. It's, again, that fresh perspective, that fluidity and that flexibility and exploring what they might need and recognizing the seasons that are coming up and what might change. The third one is my partner should automatically know my love language and cater to it. So as Blair said before, that this expectation that they're just going to know what you want to be, and we say this about everything, it's not just about this, but just expecting they're going to know how you feel loved and how they should be catering to that. You can't just expect that, especially because it could be totally off their radar, which is the same with us, the present thing, totally off my radar when we first got together. It wasn't even a thing. So I could very easily just assume you don't really care about gifts, and you could very easily have just assumed she doesn't really care about me because she's not really focusing on gifts.
And the thing here too, we also make the sort of reference to, our careers, right? So how we put so much emphasis in growing and learning in our careers to equip us to be able to do those jobs well. And, organizations, like companies, hire people to come in and to help their team understand each other, right? Like they come in, they do these personality tests, they do these trainings to help the team actually know the other person better, because again, it helps you understand their way of thinking, what, their learning style, their work style, everything, right? Because again, you and I are so different. And this was a big thing when we first started dating. Amy and I were doing an internship together, and we did this personality test. And I think it was a light bulb moment for us. It wasn't the 5 love languages. It was a different
MBTI,
one.
I think it was.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but
Myers-Briggs.
That's it.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was helping to really understand where actually our working styles are so different, and we were kind of getting frustrated at each other because I'm well planned. Like I've got a structure. I've got like, this is all the different things that we're doing.
And Amy is
very last minute.
Planned last minute.
But yeah, exactly. Well planned last minute.
At being last minute.
Yeah. But that's where she operates. She does really well in that area where I struggle. I stress out because I'm like, man, we've got all these things to do, but you cram. You'll be like, get it done. It'll be good, and it'll be all last minute, and it stresses me out. So again, like it's those learnings that we had in a professional sense really helped us in our personal relationship. Helping understand the person more.
Yeah. And it goes even further too, even if you've had that conversation, and like we spoke about with the mug, if you were to say, this is my love language, I've communicated that with you, and then just expect that it's, like a demand that I love you in this way, or I just understand what that means for you, that's also missing the mark. It's about that conversation and guiding your partner. And it helps you understand, if you're reflecting as well and doing that process, it helps you understand yourself more too, and your reactions. Like the Reddit story, she was upset because he wasn't doing stuff for her. Her doing that process is helping her understand, oh, why does this matter to me so much? Oh, that's probably why. And the fourth one is love languages never change. So what worked for you 5 years ago might not be what's working for you now. It's actually quite a fluid thing and quite a changeable thing in the seasons. And we've found this so much with parenthood, so much, especially because mine initially was physical touch was quite high. And then when we had kids, I was touched all the time. Like I just felt completely like touched out having the kids on me, the babies on me all the time. And so that totally shifted. And quality time as well. Like we work from home together now and we're with each other all the time. So there's an element of quality time that probably isn't as important as before. Well, there's probably a different type of quality time.
Yeah, and so Gary talks about love tank in his book, and this is where we've learned a little bit more in this area from our experience, right? So Gary talks about in the 5 love languages about, you know, your love tank, which is essentially it's your measuring stick, right? So if your love tank is empty, you're not going to feel appreciated. And how do you fill that love tank? Well, Gary talks about speak their love language, and that tank's going to fill. What we've come to realize for us is actually there's multiple tanks and they cover for all of the love languages. There's a tank for every love language because so again, my lowest is words of affirmation, right? It's my lowest one. But if I never get words of affirmation from Amy, I feel neglected. I feel not appreciated, right? But if you but it takes a while for that to happen. It's like if you never do that. So it's not just a matter of speak their love languages and you're sweet. It's that check-in. It's like, well, how are you feeling in this area? How are you feeling in this area? How are you feeling in this area? And it's that growing in all of those things. And it's a lifetime growth. Just to be really, really clear. Like, I think that's really important to state too. You're not going to like read this book or do any of these like little course things and be like, cool, we've got this now. This is a tool for the lifelong journey of growing in a relationship. You're not going to ever nail it. We're never going to nail it. And we're always learning and always adapting because seasons always change and our needs always change.
The nailing of this concept is allowing it to be something that informs your conversations, your curiosity. That's the nailing of it.
The nailing of it, in my opinion, is the committing to the growth and to the intentionality of these things.
So the fifth and last misunderstanding that might come with love languages is that love languages, oh my gosh, I can't even speak languages, is they aren't an excuse for imbalance. So if your partner is telling you they're feeling disconnected, your response can't be, but I've been giving you words of affirmation like you said you liked. Or the flip side of that is like, but I love in words of affirmation, so I'm giving you words of affirmation. Like you should just see that this is my love. So it's not an excuse for anything. And it's definitely not an excuse for imbalance. It's not an excuse to be like, oh, I'm not going to put the effort in because of this, and this.
Hey guys, as you know, we love to interrupt your listening right now and bring in a little ad time. If you're loving these conversations and want to take your relationship growth even further, we've got things for you.
Yes, we have a number of free relationship resources on our website. We've put together some really powerful tools, and some of them specifically relate to episodes as well. So if you are wanting little challenges or extra content, please hop on over to our website at honeyweneedtochat.com and look at our freebies page and see what might be there that can be helpful. It's already ready for you. It's free. And if you sign up, we can also remind you as the new ones come out as well.
So if you're ready for deeper conversations and exclusive content, the link will be in the description below. All right, that's it. That's all we had. Let's get back to the episode.
Okay, so we've talked about why love languages are misunderstood, potentially, why it might go a little off the rails. Let's just discuss a few ways that might be more constructive to think about love languages. So 1, love languages are tools. They're not labels. We've said this over and over in this episode, but that having that framework, having that in your mind as you're navigating this is really important. They're not rigid categories. They're not boxes you're going to fall into and never be moved from them. They are just a way to recognize love in the way that your partner's expressing it, in the way that you're expressing it, and a way to work together. So if an example of this, instead of saying, I only feel loved when you write me heartfelt text messages, you could say, I love words of affirmation, but I also appreciate it when you make me coffee or hold my hand. So it's a matter of using it as a tool to recognize those love bids. And a little question you can ask yourself in this space is, are you only focusing on how you want to be loved? Or are you noticing that there's love already there? So the second one is asking the question, what would make you feel loved this week? And I actually love this one. I feel like this is a really practical way to navigate these things. Love needs shift depending on your life circumstances, and you can't always assume that your partner needs the same thing, as we've said. So an example of this is a partner who usually loves physical touch might prefer acts of service after a long work week or when they've had a baby. Instead of a hug, they might just want you to handle dinner. So instead of letting that be something that's scary and overwhelming, you can let it be a good practical thing that you've like discussed together about how would you best feel loved this week. So make it a weekly habit to ask, what's one thing I could do for you this week that would make you feel really loved?
I love that. I love that. It's such a practical question to ask, you know, because again, a lot of the time we do things with the best intention, but it just doesn't hit the mark. You know, take the guessing out of it. It's like, no, this is how I know. But even asking that question is going to make the other person feel loved.
Yeah, it'll make them feel loved and make them think about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just like, you know, if you came into me one day like, I really want to like show my love to you this week, how would that best be? I would feel that just from that question alone. But if you didn't do it, I'd be pissed off. Well, I wouldn't be pissed off. I would feel like, it's just like I want to see you back it up.
Yeah, but you have to then be careful to not fall into the I've told them now, so they've better do it this way. So that is a trap. So don't do that to me.
No, I wouldn't. I would never.
Especially if it's some really expensive gift. But the other part of that too is, and I think this is the challenge, is not allowing that to then become your rule. And then it's the mental load side of things. So you're not just like, every week I'm going to ask them how they want to feel loved, and I'm going to remove the load mentally of that from myself and make them have to answer me. So it's a delicate balance of using this as a constructive tool that helps inform that conversation rather than an excuse to leave that to them. No. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So just having that as a check-in point. And when you do your weekly check-in with all the other things we've talked about having check-ins with, this could be something that you put in there as well. Number 3 is love is about effort. It's not just about preference. So a strong relationship isn't just about being loved in your own way or loving your partner in their own way. It's about recognizing the efforts that go into that, even when it's love that's expressed differently. And I think it can be hard when there's a pattern of love being expressed in a way that's not catering for you, or especially if you've had the conversation before and it's not changing. But the effort that goes into someone expressing love is really important to be aware of as well. Yeah. Because that is, even if it's not hitting the mark, it is still valid. It's still something that they've put effort into, and it's important. So if your love language is quality time, but your partner is all about acts of service, you might crave deep conversations while they're busy folding laundry and filling your car with gas. But they are showing you love. You just need to see it. But you also need to be able to have that conversation. So again, this one comes with a grain of salt and a balancing flexibility with it as well. And the last one is notice your partner's love bids, which is similar to what we've just discussed. Love bids is something they talk about in the book as well. And that's the small everyday little attempts that people put towards making connections. So holding someone's hand, saying I love you, like these little things that we just inject into our days. Those are called love bids. Sending a meme, a really funny reel, could be a love bid.
Is it though, Amy? Is it? The first one, maybe. The 100th one, come on.
It's 100 little love bids. So the mistake is ignoring love bids because they don't look like romantic gestures, but it is important to recognize the heart behind them. So an example, your partner mentions something random about their day and you brush it off, but that was a love bid in a small way where they were reaching for you. They were reaching for a connection. And I think one of the things that is a really common distraction from these moments is people's phones. And I definitely find this as well, like being distracted by your phone or your social media or your connection to the wider world and just not having the time to be present. So I think there's things that play a part in our everyday lives that make it hard to recognize those little love bids, especially when it's things like little conversations or little moments. But it's important to try and take a moment to recognize them. And I find this a lot with our kids. There's a lot of times where I just am so zoned out and I feel like I can't be present for every single little love bid that they give me of pieces of information and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Which is, I have a lot of grace for myself and every parent because it is a lot, especially when you've got 4 of them at the one time going, but it's a good example of this where there's moments of love bids being like little dropped around and it's very easy to just not see them. Yeah. So just being aware of those things. So a challenge for this one is for the next 24 hours, pay attention to all the little ways your partner tries to connect. Instead of overlooking them, respond even in small ways. So every time your partner touches your back as they walk past or your butt, Who knows? Every time, you know, they say I love you, or every time they're telling you something about their day, try and notice it as a love bid to connect and being aware of those small things. So those are some of the ways we can think better about love languages and kind of reframe it and use it in a constructive way instead of allowing it to become something that we misunderstand.
Yeah.
That's love languages, guys.
Oh, we nailed it.
We nailed it.
We nailed that love language.
Yeah. We're going to move into our reality check corner now. Make this a little practical. This season, we really want it to be practical. We really want you guys to be able to, if you want, to take that challenge right now today and be like, actually, I'm going to try this. This is worth trying. And so we've incorporated this reality check corner to have some really quick, easy things that you can do in your relationship, by yourself even, to reflect on your relationship right now, if you want. So the first one is our reflection prompt. This is just something I want you to think about. Just take a moment to assess how you're going personally with this. When was the last time you asked your partner how they needed to be loved rather than assuming you already know? And as we said, hop on over to Patreon if you want to see us talk about this, because I've already got answers.
Cheating.
Blair hasn't thought about this for ages. That's not what we want you to do. All right, connection challenge. This is a little challenge you can do. So for the next 24 hours, ask your partner in the next 24 hours, I should say, not for the whole 24 hours because that will become annoying. In the next 24 hours, ask your partner, what is something I can do today that would make you feel really loved? And then try and do it. Obviously, some things are easier done than others, but be creative and work on around the suggestion that they have. And just having a moment where you're being incredibly intentional with that as a challenge to yourself, I think is really helpful. 24 hours, easy to do.
Yeah, it's not.
Not hard.
Not.
All right, now we've got a future pace exercise. And this is where I just want you to try and really, really visualize, think about, reflect on what I'm about to read out. And we're trying to project a future that we want and that we're aiming for. And then we're trying to gather the emotions and the feelings and the senses that we have and the things we're seeing, feeling, whatever in that, and borrow from that for now, because that helps you in terms of motivating how you go forward. So you can close your eyes if you want, or you can just sit and think about what I'm about to read out. I want you to fast forward 5 years into the future. You're sitting across from your partner, laughing, feeling deeply connected. There's an ease between you that wasn't always there because you both finally figured out how to love each other well. And when you think back, you remember one specific conversation that changed everything. I want you to just sit there for a second and picture what that looks like, how you guys are sitting or standing, how you're talking, what your partner's face looks like, how you're feeling inside, what the scenario around you might be, and just really picture that future. Now I want you to ask yourself, if you had that conversation that changed everything right now, if you sat down and asked your partner, what is one way I can love you better? What might shift? What might come up in that conversation? And what is stopping you from having that conversation if you haven't had it? Good questions, Amy.
Great questions, Amy.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for being here for love languages and what might make them a little misunderstood. We hope this is a helpful episode in terms of clarifying some of that.
And if it is helpful, please let us know. If you disagree with anything, please let us know, because, again, this is an area where we want to grow in.
Yeah, we're learning.
Continually grow in and learn in. So, or just comments. Let us know. We want to hear from you guys. We don't want to just hear from our chatters, even though we love hearing from our chatters. But we want to hear from you too. So send in.
Yeah, and share it with a friend if you think it's helpful. Share it with a friend, review, rate, all of those things go a really long way to supporting the podcast and helping us keep going.
Yeah. Good
Great.
chat.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.